So today we want to talk about the final verdict so far for the Kamila Valieva case. The Court of Arbitration for Sports, the CAS, ruled Monday that Valieva can still skate due to exceptional circumstances, and they listed a couple of reasons. The CAS released publicly what clauses and reasons they used to justify the verdict, and today we will discuss the validity and implications of those results. One, she's a protected person because she's a minor under the rules of the World Anti-Doping Code. Second, protected persons, including a minor, have different standards of evidence and lower sanctions. And the third point is that when ruling, the panel considered fundamental principles of fairness, proportionality, and irreparable harm, which we will talk about later, that preventing the athlete from competing at the Olympics will cause her irreparable harm in these circumstances, quoting the official verdict. And untimely notification of the results of the athlete's anti-doping test did not allow Valieva to establish certain legal requirements for her benefit during the Olympics. So they were also saying that she did not have time to get a lawyer or other legal support as this kind of just spun in the midst of all the Olympic madness. So that is the current verdict as of now. And this is, as we saw on the Olympic Committee's website, that this is not the official final verdict. It is just the verdict that Valieva can continue to skate in the women's or the ladies' event.
The International Olympic Committee Executive Board also issued a statement with 4 main points and updates. The first is that no team event medal ceremony is going to be held during this Olympics. The second is if Valieva finishes in the top 3, no women's flower medal ceremony is going to be held. The third is that the IOC requests a 25th competitor be allowed to skate in the free skate instead of just 24, due to the fact that if Valieva gets removed, there's still 24 skaters. The fourth update is that the Olympics will organize a medal ceremony after Valieva's case concludes and a decision has been made.
Thinking through the thoughts on the verdict, so obviously the first thing that comes to mind is that it's largely unfair for other athletes who are now, in a sense, knowing that they're not competing in like a fair playing field going into the ladies' event. So Emma, what do you think? Do you think that this will help other competitors mentally or hurt them in the midst of all this Olympic madness, while they should be focusing, each competitor should be focusing on just, training their best before the competition and going in with a strong mental game and performing to their best without having to worry about there being an unfair playing field? What do you think about that? And do you think that would they feel less nervous because of this chance that, maybe like some of the girls who were expecting a full Russian podium might now have a chance at the bronze?
Yeah, so I think honestly everyone already knew that the Russians were, engaging in some sort of suspicious activity, maybe even
Yeah.
before this whole thing broke out, but it wasn't as broadcasted on the news or as like a front page sort of topic. So I don't think it's a surprise to anyone. That being said, I do think some people will feel more nervous just because they're not immune. They're seeing what's on the news. They're like, maybe I have a chance. So then that might stress some athletes out. But at the same time, I feel like if they did their training and preparation to the fullest, that shouldn't be something that phases them. Like this should be something that they've practiced either with their sports psychologist or in talks with their coaches. They should know that no matter really what goes on in the background, they should just focus on their own performance. Specifically, you mentioned Wakaba and Kaori. I think those are 2 skaters who have been relatively consistent this season. I would hope that their teams have made sure that they don't really get phased by additional extraneous news from media sources.
Right. The news actually caught a British skater, Natasha McKay, on an interview giving a comment on Valieva, and she said, I don't really know the details, and I'm focusing on what I'm doing. She's a great skater, and to land that quad at the Olympics is incredibly cool, but I'm here to do my job. I've not been taking any notice of the story, and I don't want to get involved, and it'll play out by itself. And that is her comment. So hopefully all the other competitors, even though knowing going into the ladies event that there will be essentially an uneven playing field, that doesn't impact their mental game. With this issue still being resolved going to the ladies' event, do you think that this will make the other Eteri girls perhaps more nervous? So Anna and Sasha, because given that they're also under the watch of kind of this like public eye now, do you think it would make them feel more nervous? Of course, there's going to be like not really additional investigation into the other Russian girls. The Russians would probably claim that it's discriminatory investigation, but how do you think that would impact their performance, perhaps?
Yeah, so I definitely don't think the other Eteri girls will get examined, just because they can always argue that no evidence has been found. So why are you doing this? You can't do this
Mm-hmm.
to us. On the other hand, for in terms of their performance, I think that whatever they're telling Camila, they're probably also telling Sasha and Anna.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from what we've seen, their mental game is extremely strong. I don't expect it to really impact their performance as much just because even though they weren't gold medal favorites, they were still silver and bronze favorites. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then to like going back to talking about the verdict itself, I think this decision sets a terrible precedent for the Russian Federation and potentially Eteri and whoever else is involved to continue to get away with almost this new strategy form now that I feel so bad for Camila because it almost feels like they're like testing this strategy with her. Since Eteri is known for, coaching younger and younger girls who are often still a minor by the time that they reach big competitions like the Olympics, this might as well as become their new strategy if the rulings don't rule against Camila because now they know that they can get away with this and they're almost using something that was made to protect minor athletes in their advantage, which is totally wrong to get away with something like this situation. I really hope that the ruling can just stop with Camila. And yes, she will kind of, in my opinion, I feel like this has already taken a big hit to her mental well being. And I'm just afraid that if this doesn't get ruled the correct way, then moving forward, more and more young girls and minor girls are going to be involved in these doping abuse cases and potentially have a huge mental health impact that would impact them for the rest of their lives. And that is another point that the Olympic Committee is making is this irreparable harm cause, and I assume that implies the mental impact to a minor on hearing this news all of a sudden. And of course we've seen the Russians PR play with having all the cameras on practice and like Valieva being shown on camera like crying and then Eteri like giving her a hug. Emma, what do you think about kind of this irreparable harm cause?
yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of psychological trauma associated with it, but I don't really think Terry or her team cares that much.
Yeah, and honestly I think that we know that the official verdict is not out yet. Like, wouldn't it harm Valieva more if she competes, wins, and then later gets the medal taken away? Like, I just don't see any case in the situation where Valieva comes out mentally unharmed. I really just hope the issue resolves with her and that it doesn't continue to impact other young athletes and for them to continue to be just sort of put in a position of abuse and mental trauma. Speaking upon another reason that the CAS made the decision was also based on the fact that Valieva did not test positive for the substance that she tested positive before European Trimetazidine during the Winter Olympics. But I think we should talk about this because she doesn't necessarily have to take this during her performance or during the Winter Olympics or even the weeks prior to get an advantage. And I know, Emma, you have competed a lot more than I have in the past. Like, do you want to weigh in on, how much taking that during the training portion, even months and months in advance, can provide such athlete advantage?
Definitely during the training portion, I would actually argue is the more important part rather than during competition, just because if you're just getting an extra endurance boost during competition, you're not it's not really going to make that much of a difference if you weren't able to like perform the elements in the first place anyways. And the advantage to taking substances during training is that it allows you the energy to practice for longer sessions, not get as tired, and do more repetitions, which is extremely important in skating. So I would even argue that during training is actually where most of the effect comes in.
Right, just in terms of we hear Eteri's can't put these girls through so many reps, and by reps, most of the times in figure skating, they're program run throughs, which to someone unfamiliar is basically training the entire performance. Which, despite you hearing that it's like, oh, 4 minutes, it's very, very tiring, especially with all these quad jumps in it, and it takes a lot of cardio capacity in order to do that over and over and over again without getting injured or collapsing. So you can see how critical that is for someone to be able to train like that in a way that almost that they definitely don't even need it when they are performing because of so much training that they're able to do when they are in fact under that substance. We touched upon this a little bit in our team event video, is that she still landed all her jumps beautifully, but her jumps looked a bit more muscled than usual. They don't look like they have as much flow as we've seen in some of her past events. And another point regarding the CAS's decision is that there's also ways to dilute urine samples before a doping test. So diuretics, even though they're not necessarily like a performance enhancing substance, they're still banned anti-doping agency because of the fact that they can help flush the trace amounts of substances that are considered doping. For example, last Russian skater in 2018 at the Pyeongchang Olympics got banned for 10 years for using diuretics. And I know that really surprising, but Carolina Kostner also faced a 21-month ban.
Yeah, so she actually faced a ban for supposedly lying to drug testers about her then boyfriend at the time, who was an Olympic race walking champion. He was in a doping situation, and she allegedly said that he was not doping. So even just being like an accomplice for someone else who was doping, she got banned for 21 months. So these are all things to keep in mind as Camila's situation and case plays out.
Right. And I think it's just crazy to see that an athlete who has actually tested positive is potentially, not the athlete themselves, but the adults surrounding the situation are not necessarily getting punished in the same way that these past cases are, which is again to, the Russian Fed potentially using this minor clause as a way to get around their sketchy behavior. Let's just put that to say the least. Speaking back to the point of unfairness, the medal ceremony. So I know, Emma, you mentioned that there has been official announcements that if Kamila does place in the top three, that there would not be any medal ceremonies at all during the duration of the Olympics. And that is also a big point of another unfairness to other athletes if this pushes their medal ceremony to not be at the Olympics, because it affects every athlete's Olympic experience, because all these people have worked so hard to be able to achieve their Olympic dreams and have this experience. And having that experience already impacted by COVID is enough, but having to work all your life and potentially be able to get on that podium but not be recognized, that must also something that would impact the athletes a lot from my perspective.
Even though they will host another ceremony in the future, it just isn't the same as actually experiencing it the day you win or the day after you win. So it's
Mhm.
definitely unfortunate for all the other people involved.
Yeah, because also it's just like with COVID, it's a trek to just travel to China in the first place and quarantine and all that. Like, if they're gonna host like another medal ceremony, like what is it gonna be like? Is it gonna be virtual? Like, I mean, like assuming all the athletes are not gonna be from Russia, are they gonna fly someone in just for a medal ceremony? Like, it just ruins the experience for all these other athletes who were clean and who trained their whole lives for this. So that's definitely another disappointing outcome of this ruling. Also, another point is that the CAS did not and will not be involved in the ruling of the team event medals, and it was stated that that would be handled by another procedure. But Emma, do you know like who will be handling that if not the CAS? Is it going to be like the IOC?
The IS, or not the IOC, but the ISU, which is International Skating Union, is the one who's going to be handling it.
Interesting.
I think Russian Fed has even more of an influence in the ISU than in the CAS or the IOC. So not really sure how that's going to play out, but
Yeah.
we'll kind of see.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like the ISU, because like making the decision, because in my sense, like the ISU is definitely not as impartial as like another non-skating related body of agency. Yeah, like speaking of other bodies of agency, there were a lot of other agencies, thoughts, or people who came out with public opinions around the disappointment at the result.
Yeah, so some of the other agencies, like the World Anti-Doping Agency and the US Anti-Doping Agency, were upset by the result. The US ADA, Travis Tigert, said that Russia had kind of stolen the moment from clean athletes, which I definitely can see. Additionally, we see Sarah Hirschland, who is the CEO of the US Olympic and Paralympic Committee, saying that the group was disappointed by the message the decision sends. I think
Yeah.
one additional point that's interesting to mention is another camp within Russia that's becoming a more prominent figure is Plushenko's camp, Angel Plushenko. And Plushenko has been cited as someone who is a critic of Eteri and often comments on situations on Eteri and Team Tutberidze. But in this case, he actually did not have any response to the situation at all. So you can kind of infer or think about implications as to potentially why he wouldn't want to be caught criticizing Eteri about this specific situation.
Right. Now, Emma, you make a really good point, and just kind of thinking about the situation critically with the information that we now know. We also speak to, in Russia, people are showing on social media that there are huge national ads, of course, supporting Kamila, the fact that she is clean and all that. It kind of shows that perhaps this is kind of more of a national effort, which I'm honestly not surprised by. I just really hope that, whatever decision they continue to make, that they make a decision that, unfortunately, because Valieva is already put in this position, will hurt Valieva, but punishes the adults appropriately so that they don't continue to do this to future minor athletes for years to come. Because if this works out in Russians' favor, and Emma, like what you said, this is their quote unquote scheme now, then it's going to be a huge issue for the namesake of our sport and for just young athletes in general in the future. So we really hope that they make the right decision and cut this off early before it becomes an even bigger issue. Well, all right. That is a wrap for today's episode of What Happened on the In the Element Figure Skating Show. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Leave us a comment down below on your opinions and thoughts, because if you're a figure skating fan, you are definitely opinionated. Be sure to subscribe. We're available on YouTube if you want to get some snazzy visuals, and Spotify if you want to just listen to our crackly voices. Thank you again. Until next time, stay edgy.